Can you hear me now? Okay, so after some technical problems, I hope that you still wait impatiently this amazing panel, which are going to be with fantastic feminists all around Central and Eastern Europe, and of course Spain, and of course my lovely colleagues from Europe and from Brussels. So let's start to tell how important that we are all together in this virtual sphere. And of course, all those who by chance don't know me, my name is Zita Gurmai. I'm president of the European Socialist Party Women Organization. Super happy to be the new vice chair of my party. So older I am, I'm getting higher grade in my party, which size is going to be smaller and smaller. You know, women comes when the parties start to be in a catastrophic situation. And the good news that we have a co-chair, an amazing young feminist, and of course the former party leader, and I'm pretty active in the Hungarian politics as vice chair of my group. Of course, Korčula is something which is pretty important for us for the last long years. I try to find out whether it's 8 or 9 years, but almost a decade. And of course, this year, as we all recognize, we cannot see each other personally, but we can see each other online. However, I'm also sad to not be with you in person, which is really, this is what I'm missing, the hugging and kissing, and of course, like normally this time of the year, we are all together. I always look forward to the energy and excitement of the Korčula School, which has been going on for a decade, as I already mentioned, and I hope it will not diminish this year, even though COVID-19 forced us to meet virtually. Yes, COVID-19 really has turned all our life upside down, socially, economically, and politically as well. The question is, what should we do to put things right again? What social and economic policies are needed to recover, restart, and also to retool society in a social, democratic, feminist manner? Our panel today will focus on feminist economics and how looking at the COVID recovery and the economy as a whole through women's eyes can help us improve the status quo. The timing, I believe, it's perfect for this topic. Before the pandemic, 2020 was set to be a great year of progress for gender equality. In Europe, we finally got a female progressive European Commissioner, Helena Dalli, my great sister, something that our women organization, in which Karina Leokovic has been a great vice president for long years, did together the fight since the early 2000s. And of course, Helena immediately got to work and in March delivered a new EU gender equality strategy, which promised to raise the profile of gender great leader. Moreover, today, 1st of October, the UN is marking the 25th anniversary of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action during its 75th General Assembly. So that's why I think it's a special day for all of us, because we know how important Beijing is in our life. We have seen a great commitment to this year by the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres to gender equality, especially on the issue of gender-based violence as well. However, despite the best intentions since the pandemic struck, gender equality has suffered, for example, in terms of poor access for sexual rights and reproductive health, increased gender-based violence, and drawing out of female voices in decision-making. The crisis has spotlighted already existing gender inequalities, especially of an economic nature. All over the world, women have seen their economic opportunities deteriorate faster than that of men, while having to shoulder the heavy burden of unpaid care work and low-paid, insecure, or informal jobs. Female-dominated sectors like tourism and hospitality have been hit hard, and women who were already low down on the economic ladder are falling even further behind when those lose their jobs. Yet it is traditionally male sectors and industries who are promised most of the recovery aid. Through this spring and during the summer, the voices of experts and politicians have been largely male. But the crisis has had a female face. The face of working women, like the stressed healthcare worker, the teleworking mother, the cashier in the pharmacy. The face of women in vulnerable situations, stuck at home with abusive partners or without access to support services and sexual and reproductive health care. And finally, the face of angry, brave women all over Europe and beyond, protesting the backlash against their rights by opportunistic right-wing governments on the street and online as well. From the white-clad women's solidarity chains in Belarus to the demonstration in favor of the Istanbul Convention in Poland, women are demanding an equal share of the power, the money, the respect, and the security. I have heard from many of my sisters around Europe who are frustrated by how gender equality is treated as a second-rate issue by decision makers during the crisis. When asking for gender mainstream budgets or gender sensitive recovery policies, all they hear is that now is not the time for such trivial concerns. But gender equality in the recovery is not optional, it is essential. The situation for women in Europe is unfair and unsustainable and has been for a long time. It is time to build back better for holistic change, starting with how we view the distribution of power, work, and money in relation to gender. PS Women and our progressive political family are leading the way in this debate at the European Union's level, and I'm really happy to see Lina, who is a great feminist within the S&D group. PES Women is about to publish a new brochure on feminist economy for Europe. Thank you very much for your great contributions, by the way, in which we set out our version for a progressive, fair, and sustainable economy that works for everyone, regardless of their gender. An economy that is inclusive and just, guided by principles of gender equality, intersectionality, diversity, solidarity, dignity, well-being, human rights, democracy, and rule of law. An economy built for real people with real concern and aspiration, not for just the profit. Achieving this vision will require more than an applause and aspirational hashtags. It demands real political will, effective policies, and funding at EU, national, regional, and local levels to change the status quo. I like to use the table as a metaphor. American politician and feminist Shirley Chisholm, the first African-American woman elected to the United States Congress, is supposed to have said, if they don't give you a seat at the table, bring a folding chair. Today I say, let's turn the tables completely to create a system of equality to get it right. I'm really looking forward to listening to this panel discussion with so many great feminist sisters and hear what you have to say about how to achieve a feminist economic recovery, especially in the Central Eastern European region. The CE Network for Gender Equality has been very helpful in providing input to our feminist economic publication. Thanks, Dasha, for the coordination. So we are happy to continue our long and fruitful cooperation. Finally, I also would like to invite you all to sign up to our PES Women newsletter, which we started yesterday, to get more updates about our feminist economy, brochures, and the article series we are launching with it. So thank you very much for listening. And of course, I'm really happy that the Young European Socialist Secretary General is going to chair you. She's an amazing feminist, and I really would like to send a little heart for all of you. And dear Dashenka, I hope that you are somewhere. I'm super happy that we have this amazing event, the Korčula School online. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Zita. I would like, first of all, to apologize for being slow in starting. We are a very participatory group, which means that we have a team in a different city. It's a regional team, so while the team is now trying to put its work together, I would just like to welcome you to the ninth session of the Korčula School. As you see, we have different segments this year, and maybe this is a silver lining because of the coronavirus, since we have the possibility of having smaller sessions and more participants and more speakers. I'd like to thank all the speakers and thank you very much, Zita, and PES Women for all the cooperation. We've had this cooperation for so many years. We look forward to a lot more. We will be looking this time at feminist economy, and it's a great starter, Zita, I think, and your team has done a great work for us to build on. I think we can actually use the work that has been done for different areas and different audiences. We'll be looking at welfare and social care, and we'll be looking, of course, at how to recover from the virus and how to restart our economies and our lives as we go along. Only a couple of questions from me for this session. I really would like our speakers to be able to sort of demystify what feminist economy is, and can we mainstream it into strategies for economic recovery, and has the feminist economy really taken root, or are we still debating the concept, or at least trying to push the concept forward? Do we have any lessons learned from those that have applied it? And what is the difference in the approach between feminist economy and gender mainstreaming in the economy? Also, what are the tools that we have at our disposal? Because at the end of the day, it's make it or break it in the way we implement. So we have, Zita has rightly pointed out the 25 years since Beijing. There have been great strides in promoting gender equality, but we have to make sure that forward-looking strategies are really forceful and empower us to also counter the current political conservative environment and climate. And in that sense, I think at the marking of Beijing plus 25, we should have and could have gone further. Somehow, among other things, because of the coronavirus, but in general, if you look at the papers and the reports and so on, they seem to be pretty flat. People have anxieties today. They have a lot of confusion. They have a lack of confidence in political leaders and public institutions, and there's instability around us. And one of our tasks is to be able to address these, and as women in active in society and women politicians, I think we should try to address these anxieties. And in that sense, I would just like to greet you and say that women can do it. And one of the most recent examples are the bold women of Belarus fighting for democracy. So let us all say bravo to them. Having said this, before I give Anna the floor to moderate, and I wouldn't like to burden her with the housekeeping rules, let me just say that please mute your microphones if you're not speaking. Znači, isključite mikrofon ako ne govorite. You can provide comments or questions in the chat box. Znači, u chat boxu možete dati komentare I pitanja. And on the right-hand side of your screen, for those who would like the floor, there is a more sign where you can actually have interpretation. So we have provided interpretation, and you can go into that mode for all those who do not speak English or who are not sure. Again, sorry for the late start, and thank you very much for your contribution. Anna, you've got the floor.
Thank you.
Yes, can now carry us forward. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Zita, and thank you, Dasha, for a very comprehensive introduction, and also for organizing this amazing project and the school. Every year, I know this year it's going to be a bit different, but it's still a great pleasure to see the school coming together this time. As it has already been mentioned by previous speakers, now next 1.5 hours, we are going to discuss the economy, but from the feminist lenses. Very often when we talk about economy, sometimes I see that men has kind of a monopoly on discussing those topics. And when we mention economy and when we go to the meetings where economy are discussed, it's mostly male dominated. I think to also break this stereotype, we have this all-female panel that is always very welcoming and interesting to listen. And next few hours, we are going to talk about what is feminist economy, why it is an alternative to mainstream economy, and what different it can offer to us. Because as it has already been mentioned, women always have been underrepresented when it comes to labor issues, when it comes to economy. And especially in Corona crisis, as I would say what Zita already mentioned, the crisis got a female face, because we see a lot of women doing care work, working at hospitals, also the fields of economy like tourism and hospitality industries are the ones who are affected the most. And we also know that those are the sectors where women are sharing their workload a lot. As well, work-life balance issues, because more women are now working from home. That also means that women who are raising the kids have less time for themselves, and more time are occupied with everyday tasks. And also mental health issues, as Dasha already mentioned, is quite big. As I said, we will discuss more deeply those issues, but with our amazing speakers. And I'm not going to introduce them.
Ja ih neću predstavljati. Htjela bih da dozvolim da se predstave sami.
If it's possible to name the 3 key points that we want to point out to carry forward when we are talking about feminist economy. So with first floor, I would like to ask Lina to introduce herself and also to answer the first questions. Thank you. Can you please?
Yes, I'm mute. So thank you very much, Anna, Zita, and all the rest, really, for inviting me to be here. I'm really very, very glad. It's a pity it's not in person, because I'm also a hack person. But anyway, we will do it here. Well, a member of the European Parliament, the S&D group. I'm vice chair of the ITRE committee, but I'm also a member of the FAM committee, the Committee for Equality and the Rights of Women and for Gender Equality, and to the Employment and Social Affairs Committee. And well, before that, just very quickly, I was a university professor and a feminist economist myself. So I'm director of the Gender and Equality Master Program in my university, and I've been doing research on that all my life. So I'll try to be short because I could spend days talking about feminist economy. So just a couple of things, maybe one of the main issues we have to keep in mind is that when we think and going out of this crisis, of this pandemic and the economic crisis that is, because we have to name things as they are, we have even close to economic depression now, we cannot do it going back to the previous normality, because this previous normality was predatory with our natural environment, but especially it was unfair and it was unequal, very, very unequal. So we cannot say we have to get back to this previous normality. So we have to rebuild, to build a new one with these feminist lenses, putting life and people and well-being in the middle, and not finance and not other issues. So that's will be the first thing. And for that, I would like to see that in what I'm doing now at the European Parliament, I would like to see that clear. Not only in the gender strategy presented by Helena Daly, that is great, really great, but also in the tools and in the recovery instruments we have now and we are negotiating now, especially the multi-annual financial framework, because the budget, it is so the main political tool where our preferences are, and also the recovery plan. And for that, the recovery plan and even the multi-annual financial framework so far are all the time, and also the Commission is all the time talking about the twin transition. It's always all the time the twin transition that we have to do it, this twin transition, of course, which is the ecological one, the green one, and the digital one. But there is a third transition we have to go through, which is the care transition. We need to move towards a different organization of care, because unless we do that, we could make really great equality policies concentrated in women in the labor market, but that will only make women to get into the labor market, as we have done in the past, in a very different way than men do, because they don't have the care mandate. So we incorporate to a labor market that is designed on a male way, in an androcentric way. So we will never fit in unless we change that. And in order to change that, we need then also taking care of the kids, taking care of the house, taking care of the elder, the disabled, so on and so forth. And we need also the public sector to organize things other ways, to organize care as well. And the last thing, I think, so we need this third transition. But in order to achieve that, in order to make, to convince our colleagues, our brothers, let's say, even our brothers, socialist brothers, to do so, we really need to move, and that's the last thing I will say in this first intervention. We need to move towards a different way of measuring economic success, and a different way of analyzing, teaching, and seeing economics. I mean, we really need, unless we move we really need to change this idea of economic success individually. We need to do also a micro level in business, in enterprises, institutions, and also at a macro level. We need to move beyond GDP, because in the GDP there is nothing, the care is not including a lot of activities that sustain our life, that made us what we are and what we can do, and that they are very unequally share are not at all included. We need other indicators. We need other economic lens. And this is where the feminist economics, we have been working for many years, already from 1970s. We were working on different way of measuring and on not only unpaid care, but many other things. So we really need to move beyond that. Unfortunately, still in the economics faculties, still in the econ committee at the European Parliament, still at the central banks, still at the Treasury and Economic Ministry. This is far away. This is really unfortunate. It's far away. They are still seeing everything with a theory which is anthropocentric, androcentric, Western-centric, and it is based in an ideal world that it doesn't exist, and on human behavior which is not real. I mean, we don't only move and take decisions looking only our own interests. This is not true, and everything, the whole theory is based on that. So we really need to move beyond this orthodox and neoliberal economy that is absolutely everywhere. So a lot of wishes, I know, but well, I hope we will be able to push the agenda forward, and of course we work hard for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Lina, for setting this interesting tone for further discussions. And indeed, what you said really reminded the saying of my favorite feminist thinker, Audre Lorde, who said that master's tools will never dismantle the master's house. So this is indeed, we need to come up with new tools for that. With the second intervention, I would like to go to Carolina. If you could please introduce yourself, and I would come with you with the same question, like 3 points that we need to carry forward in our discussion, and not only.
Thank you, Anna, and thank you to Zita, Dasha, Tamara, Andrea, Katya, everyone who actually prepared this panel and the whole program of Korčula School. This year, of course, it would have been better if we could have met on Korčula actually in Croatia, but next year, I suppose we will be able to do so. I'm really pleased to be here with you. And actually, Anna, answering your call for 3 points, I came up only with 2 points. And these are labor relations, which I think are very important when we talk about women's economic participation and recovery of our economy, and unpaid care work. So I will just kind of continue where Lina finished, or where Lina took us in her opening. And I would just like to spend like maybe a couple of minutes talking about how the Croatian society, the economy, and of course how Croatian women actually did during this pandemic, because that's something that I think is timely and is important to say. And for those whom I didn't meet before, or who didn't happen to meet me, I have a lot of functions that are like former. I had a lot of functions in my own party. I'm from a social democratic party. I was a member of parliament and the leader of the women's organization, but now I'm just a member of social democratic party, and actually I'm working in the secretariat of the party dealing with issues of minorities and human rights. And what I've been working on and dealing with in the last couple of years has been actually the kind of women's participation in the labor market, and especially in the trade unions, because I'm also a trade union member and activist, and have been actually cooperating with trade unions on many occasions. And one of those that I find most interesting and inspiring was actually the pension reform here in Croatia, that we had there was supposed to be a referendum on the retirement age in Croatia. So I also participated very much in this type of activities. And I do think that when we talk about economy, when we talk about women on the labor market, I think we have to go back or establish new type of connections with the trade unions, members of trade unions, but also with all those who work and have precarious jobs and actually are not members of trade unions. We have to find out how actually we as social democrats, as progressive socialists and labor activists actually address the needs of those people, and many of them are women and many of them are young women. So let me just spend a couple of minutes on just sharing a couple of information on the COVID-19 pandemic in Croatia, but there are also some participants from Croatia and from the region here who can of course talk in detail. So I won't bother you with a lot of statistics, but I would just like to maybe share some information on how the Croatian economy, which is very much dependent actually on services and on tourism. And we know that many women are employed in services and in tourism. Actually, I would say risked lives of many women and many people employed in those tourism, let's say in restaurants or in retail, by opening the restaurants, hotels, and actually, as our Prime Minister said, with a controlled risk, actually organizing the tourist season, summer season in Croatia this year. We were in lockdown for 2.5 months, but then all of a sudden, at the beginning of June, I think, or the end of May, everything was open in Croatia because we wanted to, as our politicians said, we wanted to take benefit of the summer season and of all the tourists from Central Europe and from Germany as well coming to Croatia as their destination. And so many people could not actually not work, so they had to actually work. And we know that many women are seasonal workers and they depend actually on the wages that they actually earn over a couple of months a year. That's why now we have around, let's say, approximately 2 new cases of COVID-19 every day in Croatia still. And I think that's a very clear relation to what happened in our economy in last couple of months. Our government, which is an EPP member-led government, HDZ-led government here, said that unless we did that, our economy would have collapsed, and we were not, the economy and the recovery, which is of course now foreseen at least in 2022 or 2023, would not have happened otherwise. So I think that's something that we have to think about when we talk about women, when we talk about jobs, when we talk about employment here, because we've seen many jobs lost actually. So many women who had the opportunity to work at least part-time or seasonally now don't have that opportunity anymore. So of course, changes in our lives and in our economy, in our education, in care work, as Lina has rightly pointed out, they happened actually overnight and have a great impact on all aspects of women's lives. And all of a sudden in March with the pandemic, it was not about balancing private and professional life, but it was about simultaneously working from home. For many women, of course, not for all of them, because some of them also had to go and work as usual in healthcare, in care, in retail and stuff. But we also had to organize and facilitate childcare and elderly care at home, because schools and childcare facilities were closed. So these problems still occur now, because you have, although schools are open, childcare facilities are open, but there are children who actually have to be in so-called self-isolation, so they cannot attend schools. And there is still this type of a problem that you have to actually, now even going to work, you have to do something and take care of your child. Of course, the consequences of this lockdown and decreasing economic activities are severe, but I haven't really been able to find data that are accurate. And I think these data are going to be available in maybe next couple of months. But I have just 3 points, and then I would like to stop at this point. We saw that female unemployment in Croatia increased, especially when it comes to seasonal workers among women, and they're mostly affected. So for many women, things got worse, of course. Low-paid jobs and low-valued jobs, invalued jobs that we so much depend on every day are still low-paid after this, or after the pandemic, or in the midst of the pandemic, and they are still undervalued. So nothing really changed for women. We all talked about, yes, now we see, how important health workers are, how important women cleaning ladies are, how important our teachers are, and stuff like that. But then just a couple of months later, nothing happened. So their salaries have not raised or increased, and we still have a lot of those jobs or those workplaces undervalued. And the third thing, I think it's Zita has already mentioned that we cannot go back to usual, but we have to think about kind of new types of organization of education, childcare, elderly care, and production as such in every aspect. But I don't see that our policymakers are actually prepared for that or have envisaged such a scenario. So I think we do need to organize, to engage, and actually to kind of think about new ways of organizing this women power that we have. And maybe now I think we will all say it's now the time to organize as leftists and as labor and progressive activists. But I think this is once in a lifetime opportunity, I guess. So I'm looking forward to hearing a lot of good ideas on today's panel, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Carolina, and thank you for also stressing the importance of cooperation also between us and trade unions and other actors on this matter. And with next point, I would like to go to Nela. Please introduce yourself and also point out the 3 key points that we need to carry forward. Thank you, Nela.
Hi, well, thank you first of all so much for inviting me to this panel. I would say this is a new space for me. Usually I haven't been part of your conversations before. As said, my name is Nela Porović-Isaković. I'm calling in from Sarajevo, from Bosnia and Herzegovina, where I basically live, work, and also go into lockdown when needed. So I'm part of Women's International League for Peace and Freedom, which is an international organization. It's actually the oldest peace organization in the world. We have 100+ years behind us. And within WILF, I have worked on activities related to Bosnia and Herzegovina, obviously, and also then more globally to activities related to feminist political economy. And here in my home country, I've combined the two by basically looking at and studying the political economy of post-conflict reconstruction and recovery from a feminist lens, obviously, and not at least critically looking at the role European Union has played in creation of our political, economic, and social realities, in particularly since 2014. So that's very shortly about me. The 3 things in keeping in mind or moving forward, basically, I think Alina and Carolina covered a lot, so with the risk of being slightly repetitive, but maybe it's with some added things. For me, it's both what we want to keep in moving forward, but also what I think we really need to stop doing. And I will start with that one. Basically, I think this region, my country, this region, European Union, but also sort of, I think globally, it resonates to me that we really need to stop rollout of the neoliberal policies. Sorry, that and something that we need to do immediately as a priority number 1. For sort of far too long, neoliberalism and capitalism have really dominated every aspect of our societies. depleting and destroying our public services, as was really proven by the COVID-19, treating our education and healthcare as a for-profit businesses, destroying our environment, devaluing workers, not at least women, and favoring profitability of a militarized world over human security and well-being. So I see sort of dismantling neoliberalism and capitalism in terms of that, building back new. I would actually say not even building back better, but building back new. And for that, for me, sort of dismantling neoliberalism and capitalism right alongside the patriarchy as our key points in terms of achieving gender equality. Sorry, my voice is somehow failing me. Then my second point would be, and I think this has pretty much been said, but I think with COVID-19, many of the things have been laid bare, not at least from the aspect of care and human well-being. And I would really like to see public policies and public investments that take the unpaid care work, but not just the unpaid care work, but the whole sort of spectrum of undervalued social reproduction out of the realm of private and into and make it sort of part of a collective effort. And for this, we really need to reclaim the importance of the public sector for gender equality and for women's empowerment, basically meaning that we need a really, really strong commitment to investments in social infrastructure. And just final third point, which is, I think, slightly more concrete than the others, considering how COVID has shown the importance of health for our communities, I would really like to see policies that help us achieve true universal healthcare coverage rolled out. And I think having universal healthcare coverage alongside with investments in social infrastructure, in particular healthcare infrastructure, would be a massive amount of time from unpaid care work for women to really participate socially, politically, and economically in our societies. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Anela, for pointing very concretely these 3 points out. And with the next question, I would go to Laura. Please also introduce which organization you represent, and from you we also want to learn these 3 key points you want to point out in the discussion.
Hello, and thank you very much for the invitation, and also congratulations for organizing this timely event, and also for the regional focus, which is often forgotten in the broader context. And I'm very honored to be speaking here today as President of Romanian Women's Lobby and also Vice President of European Women's Lobby. As probably many of you know, European Women's Lobby is the largest women's organization in Europe, having more than 2,000 members. And so I've been working for 25 years I'm in Iași, particularly right now. I'm in Iași. I was born in Iași. Romania is a city in the northeastern part of Romania. And so here we opened the first shelter for victims of domestic violence, which will be relevant in the later discussion. And also I've been working by building coalition of NGO in Romania, Romanian Women's Lobby, on more than 10 years already, and working at the lobby level in terms of on domestic violence mainly, but also in inclusion, diversity, and working with our members. The focus for today being on feminist economics, actually at the beginning of this year, early before COVID started, European Women's Lobby launched its publish its own feminist economics book. It's called Purple Pact for a Feminist Economic Model. And I'm happy that we'll be able probably during today's discussions to enter much more deeply on that. But going back to the 3 wishes we were asked to think on, but the 3 of them are all of them linked with feminist economics. And what we design in the lobby is the fact that the 3 pillars, and many of you already mentioned that the 3 pillars of a feminist economic models are based on constructing a care economy, creating an inclusive society, and also building a feminist future where no one is left behind. And so, in a way, my first wish, which is very much linked with care economy, is paradoxically, when you're talking about care and thinking more about women, is a world in which equality between women and men becomes a reality. I would like to see it in my lifetime, because I think we can no longer wait for change to happen. And actually, in the words of Gandhi, obviously, we must become the change we wish to see. So therefore, I think progressive political parties, and here we are surrounded by progressive political parties, and also feminist leaderships have a crucial role in actually steering us toward this vision of having a caring economy. The second wish is that in order to have a feminist future where no one is left behind, we cannot talk about this in a life in which all forms of violence against women are not eradicated. So actually, that's my dream, that this patriarchal expression of dominance over women's and their bodies will be also smashed, like someone else before me already said. And we will talk about the links between violence against women and budgets and economy later. But before that, we need to have a framework in which this can be done. And so we actually need to fully ratify and do the implementation of Istanbul Convention. And you all already mentioned the challenges we have in our region. So again, we need strong feminist leadership to never give up until this happens. And the last wish, which is based on also to have a feminist economy, to have an inclusive society, that means that the dream is that we don't have this, that all women of all ages, of all disability, origin, social class, etc., have real choices in their lives, and they are not longer taken for granted. And we already talked about this when we talk about the fact that women needs to take all these low-paid jobs, precarious jobs, how we call it. And also when we talk about equal pay for work and equal value and equal pensions, also that will prevent the feminization of poverty. So actually, particularly as women age, through parity democracy and the feminist long-term societal project in which everybody needs to benefit. And that also means that we need support for progressive forces, for a strong civil society as an independent crucial voice for democracy. And we all have seen how important women voices and civil society was in Belarus these days. And also how important are that civil society, mostly particularly women's organizations, are very well funded, and to be able to advocate for this progressive change. So this is again linked with feminist economics, but I'm sure we'll be able to talk more about this later on. So I'm very happy to be here and looking forward to hear all the perspective of the great panelists we have today. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura, for interesting intervention. And now, as you also mentioned, let's go more deep into the concrete topics. As Nela also already mentioned, it's also interesting that we look at the issue from the regional perspective, because it might be a bit specific, it might be a bit different. So it's good to take into the consideration this context that we are working. And with my next question, since Lina left us due to other commitments, I would directly go now to Carolina. You already elaborated a bit from the Croatian context and the situation post. We have Lina back. Sorry, I will go to Carolina and then get back to Lina. So you worked with a lot of non-governmental organizations, civil society actors. So from that perspective, what you can see is that it's the biggest demand from their side, and is it done in Croatia the way it is demanded, in your opinion?
If we talk about reproductive rights, for example, and if we talk about the sexual rights of women in Croatia, and well, the situation is not as bad as in Poland, but we do expect a new law on abortion to be presented in the parliament very soon. So if we talk about these questions in Croatia, then yes, there is a need to kind of build a strong opposition against what the government is going to propose, obviously, and what, of course, some other actors like Catholic Church in Croatia and some really very, I would say, influential conservative circles would like our right to decide on our own bodies look like in the future. And of course, when we talk about economy, and these things are related, of course, it's not like we talk about economy on one side of the spectrum and then we talk about reproductive rights on the other side. I think everything is connected, because if you are not economically able, or if you don't have the economic potential, you cannot decide on your own lives, right? That's how I also perceive the violence against women, partly, of course, depending on the economic and social status of women. When it comes to economy, now we are in the process of, well, start of the negotiations between the social partners, entrepreneurs, and their representatives, government and trade union representatives on the changes in the labor code. And what the entrepreneurs and the government want, and they say it's because of the COVID-19 crisis and the consequences of COVID-19 crisis, is the future flexibilization of the labor relations in Croatia. And that is something that has to be #1 priority for my party and for all the other left and progressive parties in Croatia. My party has a bit of a problem in that sense, because our government in 2014 actually initiated and legislated the labor code, which was not favorable of workers and their rights. So we have a lot to learn from that, and obviously we now have a new leadership of the party. So I hope that in next couple of months we will see the new direction for social democrats and progressives in Croatia, and building partnership with NGOs, with civil society activists, and especially with trade unions and women activists in trade unions, who actually 6-7 years ago, when we had this changes of the labor code, had a very good, but unfortunately not really successful campaign, which was dedicated or focused on women's labor rights. So what I would like to see is actually this type of a conversation. How are we going to actually tackle the consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic on our economy? How are we going to transform our economy so that it works for the people and for the workers, and not for those actually who have the capital, who actually own the means of production, as the Marxists would say. Yeah.
Thank you, Carolina, for introducing us a bit more from Croatian perspective. And with the next question, I would like to go to Lina. Since you are an MEP representing S&D, can you please tell us a bit more on the S&D position paper about progressive gender-sensitive approach to COVID-19 crisis, and what exactly S&D is doing regarding it?
Well, thank you. I hope you hear me well. I'm now.
I was in a corner and no one was seeing me, but now I'm in the train, so I cannot mandatory. So I have to say that this is a very important at the parliamentary level, trying to introduce gender mainstreaming. We have a network in the parliament on gender mainstreaming. One person represents each one. So from culture, the culture, another one for the economy, and so on and so forth. So the majority of members of a group are from the S&D. So that's the. You can hear me.
We cannot really hear you.
Lina, maybe without video, it's easier.
Let's try. Now?
Now, a bit better.
Yeah? Okay.
Yes.
Now, it's just said that we have the European Parliament Agenda Mainstreaming Network that's supposed really to check if we are introducing gender mainstreaming in every single of the committee legislative work. And so the majority, over 2/3 of member of the European Parliament belonging to that group are from the S&D. So just to show you how important also are the ones pushing really very hard. The new recovery plan, the
we again. Lina?
Yes.
Okay, we can try. We are losing you sometimes. We cannot hear you that well.
So maybe in a sort of 20 minutes or so, I will be in a better connection. So if maybe you could pass to other colleagues, and then I will.
Yes.
If that is fine, yes.
Yes, we can.
Okay, great.
Soon, but before going to the next speaker, I have been told Zita might want to say some words before she's leaving us. So Zita, if you want to take a floor now.
Okay. Okay, so first of all, it's a great privilege to see some more sisters picture right now. And as my Vice President Maria Bill is with you, so you will have an absolutely stronger presence from the PS women presidency. So that is just my first comment. Okay, I would say that we had so many interesting thoughts. And I'm really happy to see some sisters whom I have never seen and whom I have seen for such a long time. I just wanted to let you know that you talk about violence, and I'm happy to inform you that in the Council of Europe Gender Equality Committee, I'm going to be the rapporteur for the general rapporteur on violence against women. So it was really, really important because the following 2 years, a socialist is going to be the rapporteur. And of course, I can work deeply on that topic as well. And honestly speaking, I don't want to speak because I think it is so interesting that our great panelist tells. So I try to stay 5 more minutes with you, but no worries because Maria is with you and she is an absolutely great vice president of PS Women. So thank you very much, Anna. I'm really proud to work with you as Young European Socialist Secretary General. So let's finger crossed, and I try to stay 5 more minutes just to get some more information. So thank you very much. And thanks for my team, who is absolutely amazing to help the preparation. And of course, Dasha, Tamara, and all the others who has been active there. So have a lovely evening, and let's hope that tomorrow will be even more exciting. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Zita, and welcome, Maria, for the next couple of minutes. And now, if we continue our discussion and questions and discussing the regional context, I would like to go to Nela to tell us a bit more what is the situation in Bosnia-Herzegovina regarding for example, when we talk about EU accession talks, is gender equality something that is pushed forward? And how can you describe this process from your point of view?
Well, thank you. Yes, it's an interesting question because the pre-accession process of Bosnia is really very, very closely tied to any ongoing reforms. Basically, we have 2 layers of reform talks, official documents, and both of which have been very closely negotiated, and I would even dare to say driven by European Union, but not just European Union, also International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. And I think it's important to enter them into the conversation because the conditionalities IMF basically pushes on Bosnia, but Bosnia is in no way sort of unique in that sense, really affects our ability to achieve gender equality. And this is something that has been well documented in other parts of the world. In Mediterranean countries, there are loads of documents and reports written of how badly IMF's conditionalities influence our struggle towards gender equality. So when we look at the reforms in Bosnia, I really want us to keep in mind the 3 main actors, apart from the local governments, obviously, which are then European Union, IMF, and the World Bank. Women have basically, if we look at it as like a collective, have been very marginally included in any of the pre-accession deliberations. Those women that have been included have been members of the parties, ruling parties, not even all parties, and also potentially few selected NGOs. This is at the very early beginnings of the sort of pre-accession and reform negotiations. The impact of this exclusion of women, other than the selected fews, really took on a serious proportions when the reforms were introduced in 2014, and which became increasingly neoliberal in their character. We had one specific document called Reform Agenda, stretched for the period 2014 to 2018, I think. Again, it was negotiated between these main actors I mentioned, and the very focus of these reforms was on structural adjustment and fiscal consolidation, very clearly stated in the document. And sort of structural adjustment and fiscal consolidation is popularly known as austerity measures. And these austerity measures have had sort of a really big effect on the access to social and economic rights. And because of the reforms, when they were planned back in 2014 and earlier, basically did not have, they were not based on any gender or human rights impact assessments. There was simply no understanding among those that negotiated how the very much needed healthcare, educational, pension, and social welfare reforms should look like in order to sort of meet the gender needs of the society, and instead of aggravating them. This document, this period of reforms, it was finished, and half of the reforms were implemented, half were not, which were it's still causing problems in our pre-accession sort of path, but we have a latest document in the pre-accession sort of reform. It's even called Joint Socioeconomic Reforms, and it covers the period 2019 to 2022. And despite its name, the reforms are mostly actually concerned with fiscal consolidation on the one hand, and the regulations of the market on the other. And if we ask ourselves where women are in this document, which is adopted by our two entity governments, well, basically you can find them in the very last subheading, in the very last chapter, and you can find women in the actual subheading. It says policies that provide opportunities to young people, women, and the vulnerable categories. And then the subsequent text or any measures suggested basically don't go into what we needed to properly sort of make sure that these reforms are gendered. And I also think this, calling them social and economic reforms was mostly a ticking the box exercise, and possibly a reflection of the outcry of some of the NGOs, among them women NGOs, in the period after the implementation of the first set of reforms, pointing out to the very gender blind sort of approach to these reforms. So I think this was very much ticking the box exercise. So to very simply answer your question, if social economic rights and gender equality are part of these conversations, very, very marginally, not to any substance, and I see them more as a ticking box where the sort of conversations and negotiations go on between European delegation on the one hand, also not always collective European delegation. Sometimes these last talks have been very much driven by individual members of the European Union. UK, which was at that point still a member, and Germany were very sort of facilitators of these talks, and our governments at various levels. And I think whatever sort of social dialogue they are having is not really providing them with the information needed to make these reforms really pave ground for reforms that would actually make difference in people's lives. I don't know if that was answer to your question, Andvaj. Yeah.
Životima ljudi. Ne znam da li je odgovor na to pitanje. Hvala vam.
Did you really well answer the question? And now I would like to ask Laura, because you already were mentioning in your previous intervention the intersectionality of the issue. So I would like you to elaborate a bit more on one hand about female empowerment, feminist economy, but on the other hand, on violence against women. So what are the links in between them? And if you can a bit go deep into the subject so that we see a clear interlinks between all those two.
Regarding intersectionality, I would use a little bit the example of what has happened recently in my country, in Romania. So this Sunday we have local elections, and still counting, of course, the percentages of women elected mayor and women elected on the local council. And what I can say for the preliminary counting, which we have done, is that we have the amazing percent of 4. So on 4%, 4% of the all women were elected as mayors, and so we'll have 96% mayor continually presenting and taking decisions, and as Zita was mentioning earlier, not having a chair at the table. Why is important to look also on this kind of representation of women and men? Because it's not necessarily is linked to access to power, but it's linked to access to resources. And all the policies, local and national policies, are coordinated by and all the budgets are under the local council and regional councils. And so that means that in the future 4 years, again, a discussion around the kind of allocation of resources and what we are talking about, gender budgeting, it will be again a science fiction concept. because we are looking around what was previously mentioned on the economy being focused on GDP and being focused on not on care economy. And so when we are looking what was happening right now during the crisis, is that the fact that it was obvious that all the burden regarding care on the elderly people, care on the people who are sick and not able to go to the hospital because the hospital were prioritizing the cases of COVID, but all the other diseases were not being prioritized. Also looking on the social services, which already we know that they were under-resourced. Looking a little bit on domestic violence, which I have mentioned before, is that if we are going to see the minimum standard services, Council of Europe is recommending, and looking on the percentage of the population and looking on the fact that women are the primary recipients of the services of domestic violence, and the fact that we still don't have enough shelters, so we don't have enough commitment to budgets. And how are we going to have all these services in the future when the priorities and investments will be still on another focus on the infrastructure, for example? So how are we spending our money? It is decided in the local council, it is decided in the local county council, it is decided in the parliament, and all the budgets are approved by the parliament. And if the people who are around the table are again only men, it's as we mentioned before, is they don't have this problem because they are not taking care of their families back home. They are not doing the homework with their children. There are some, but many of them don't. They are not taking more jobs to be able to pay their bills. So actually all this discussions around the real issues of the society is something which will be a parallel world. So like on one hand, we'll have the women trying to struggle and solve the problems with being under-resourced on the budgetary. On the other level, we have the discussions which will happen to the table. And that discussion will not reflect actually the reality of this crisis, the reality of this pandemic, the reality which was before pandemic. And that's the idea that if we need to have real reform, we need to have more women to that table. And for that, we need to go and said, we need more women on eligible places on the list, because really, political party are putting women on the list, but not on the places in which they will be able to be elected. And so also having gender blind information, like when we are reporting right now under COVID situation, the unemployment. So we will not present the unemployment linked with with the sex of the people. So how many women are unemployed, how many men? Maybe our countries who are collecting the information like that. But when we are looking to the national level, you can't see that they are feminized sectors, which will obviously, when we talk about who are the people losing their jobs, and we know they are the women losing their jobs, that will not be reflected on the national level on the Ministry of Labor policy, because the collection of data will be done on a neutral base. So that's something which need to be harmonized at the European level. So all the data collections need to be segregated under not only on the age, but also on the sex. It seems like an obvious thing, but unfortunately, institutions are not collecting yet the data like that. And the second is to have more women on the decision-making place where the budgets are discussed and allocation. For example, I'm linked with what Nella has previously said regarding the fact that many governments need to tick some boxes on the future structural funds. who are under discussion on the table of many countries in Europe right now. When you are looking to the future programs and the future funding, if you are looking if they have taken into consideration gender impact assessment, it's zero, it's not there. And also all the negotiations which needs to be done around how a project will be assessed, if it will be how the beneficiary are women and men, girls and boys, it's still not there. So this is kind of intersectionality we need to take into consideration also on the funding, on the decision making, on the budgets, and also on the inclusion. So it's a lot to discuss around this, but again, is everything about power, budgets, and how we are doing this. For us, for example, for Romania, the next 4 years are lost from the perspective of women. Maybe I'm too pessimist right now, but having only 4% women mayors in all the rural areas in which nothing in care economy has been done. We don't have elderly centers, we don't have social services, we don't have childcare, we don't have jobs which are well paid for women to come back from the countries where they are working right now, from leaving Romania. So actually these policies will not, if it was not decision like that was not taken in the past, I don't think will be taken in the future, because nothing has changed. Just the people who are there are changed, but they are the same perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. And unfortunately, due to technical reasons, Lina cannot join us. But first of all, I would like to thank her for her efforts to join. And besides, she left us very interesting comment on the chat regarding what S&D is doing. And for more, you can, of course, check the position papers that S&D proposed regarding progressive gender-sensitive approach to COVID-19, where it's more long-term strategy. How can we mainstream gender equality on all levels and on all regulations? So thanks a lot, Lina, for providing these proposals to us in the chat. And now, since time is running up, I would like to slowly go to the final closing round and finalize our discussion with the wish list. And here I also would need a bit of involvement from the audience. I see a lot of comrades and friends have joined our discussion. So first of all, I would like ask panelists to very, very briefly name one thing that we want to hear a bit more on decision-making level, on discourse level, when we are talking about gender mainstreaming or gender feminist economy, and one thing that we do not wish to hear more regarding in the context of a feminist economy. Our speakers will have the chance to elaborate it vocally in the videos, but our attendees can also comment on the chat, and then at the end I can voice it out loud. So Nela, you can start.
All right, thank you. I've been thinking hard about this wish list because obviously you want to say a lot of things, but I've landed on one thing that I think sort of covers a lot of my other wish parts, which is solidarity. I would really like to stick to that concept and see more of it, but not, I feel there is use of the word solidarity these days, specifically in European Union and most recently in the context of this new migration pact, but not that type of solidarity. I think they've emptied it of context. What I would like to see is solidarity as a political tool that sort of with it carries an understanding that we live in a system of oppression and inequality, and that empowers us as a collective to work towards dismantling something that so obviously is not working for us anymore, in solidarity with each other across nations, with the nature and everything, you know, that surrounds us, and that we are based on that building back better. I think for me, that's the core for achieving gender equality. And I think if we would see more of that in the political discourse, we would be heading towards something good. The thing I don't want to hear about anymore, and I'm really speaking from the position of Bosnia, and this might come a bit strange because what I actually don't want to be hearing more about is women's economic empowerment. And I'm speaking from the Bosnia's very projectized approach to women's economic empowerment, where basically this has meant privileging entrepreneurship and measuring empowerment of women within the economy through individual successes instead of collective gains. So basically not valuing labor movements, not valuing labor rights, redistribution of resources, but basically measuring individual aspirations and entrepreneurial identities. And I think this does very little for the structural changes that need to happen for women to be participating in the economy on an equal level as men. Thanks.
Thank you, Nela, for being very concrete. And Carolina would also be happy to hear the wish list from you.
Yeah, thank you, Anna. And since Nela already used the term solidarity, which I also wanted to come up with, then I had to alter my choice, and it's the redistribution of power. That's what I want to hear more when we talk about women, economic and social status in society. So I think that's crucial. When what I think about, or what I think of when I think of redistribution of power, is actually has to do a lot with the changes in the labor market and the changes in the, as we say, the world of work. So what's the future of work, and what's the future of women in that work? And I hope that progressives and social democrats would not expect from women and men, from workers in the future, to work 8 hours, but maybe 6 hours, and then I would always opt for that option. And I think in the region and in Croatia especially, we are so unambitious when we talk about what we want from the new legislation on labor and how we want to tackle the crisis now. So we just tend to kind of turn ourselves or our heads and minds to Brussels, and just to kind of follow what our older democracies or more important countries or states in the EU already did. And we actually do not have enough courage to come up with our own ideas that have to do with what we've heard today, had to do with solidarity or with collective kind of approach instead of individual gains or losses. And what I don't want to hear anymore is mentioning of unproductive kind of work, or unproductive kind of unproductive, I wouldn't say people, but this kind of thinking about private sector as a productive sector and the public sector as an unproductive one. So that's really a division that we have here in our media, in our mainstream politics. And I think it's very dangerous for not only the gender equality perspective, but also for a left perspective in our countries. So I would like to somehow dismantle this mantra of unproductivity of someone's work, let's say the work in public sector, be it teachers, healthcare workers, or administration in public sector. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. And Laura, what is in your wish list?
Well, it's a long list, wish list. One which I previously mentioned was regarding more women on eligible places on the list, and so actually more women in actual politics at the table. And but in relation with our today discussion is we want to promote more this concept of care deal for Europe, which European Women's Lobby is proposing, which is also in connections with the Green Deal. So actually it's a society in which we are focusing on the well-being of people and the planet. So when we focus, and this is also in connection on what Carolina has said, because is when you're not focusing on that regarding productivity, but you're focusing on well-being, all the values around well-being of people and planet, if they are a priority, that leads, all the resources are going towards well-being, and well-being is very much connected to care for the others and care for planet. So that is something, if we will, this is why it's important to have more women around the table, because women will always focus on the well-being of the others. So that having that leaders, women at the table, they will make this decision to see this at place. I don't say that men will not support this, but probably they will not fight for this. And what I will not want to hear more is that expression which everybody, when try to defend the fact that they are not doing enough to have equality between women and men, said, either is I'm not a feminist, and this is in the words also of women and men, which is all sometimes replaced with saying I am a feminist, but. So always when it's a but at the end of I'm a feminist, that means, well, I have a long list of excuses why I'm not doing that, even if I believe in that. So if either you believe and do something for it, or either you are not a feminist. So this is, I want to hear less. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. And before closing and giving final words to Dasha, I would like to say that we have a lot of greetings and interest from the audience, also from Facebook. We have greetings from Laura Komatina, Ernst Stetter, and Tatiana Petric. I also would like to thank all the friends who have joined, and we see on our live, and once again, of course, the greatest thank goes to our speakers. I think we really managed in this short time. Unfortunately, we do not have more and we have to close very soon, but we really managed to touch a lot of issues and point out the key points. So I would like to thank all of you for being very interesting and productive speakers. And now, of course, back to Dasha, who will finalize our panel. And from my part, thanks a lot for inviting me as a moderator.
Sorry. Thank you very much, Anna. As I think it was Pia said, you did a great job as a moderator. It's not always easy, especially on the video and with so many wonderful speakers. I think the discussion was extremely interesting. There were a lot of things that we should think about in the future and maybe explore a bit more. Some of the issues were I wouldn't say innovative, but we're actually putting the finger on where we can improve. Although we had a late start and birthing problems are always there, we've actually, what I've counted without the Facebook of Best Women, we've had around 180 people online watching us and listening to this discussion. And as again, thanks to all the wonderful panelists, I would just like to leave you with a number of points that seemed to me of interest for follow-up. I would. There was a talk about, and I think it was Carolina, talk about redistribution of power. And then Nella also built on that, and in a way, Laura. The question, for us is, are we really able and empowered on the economic side to push within our progressive families and in the society. I think that redistribution of power is extremely important, not in the sense where we are placed in the ministries or presidencies of the parties, but rather that we actually also develop our policy, that we will push through these mechanisms. And I was listening the other day to a fantastic discussion on why we're not making progress. And it was as much a process as it was a strategy or the concept. So maybe something on the tools that we could work on. On the tools, there was an issue of, and I think it was Laura, intersectionality, disaggregation. We mentioned also budgeting. We do have some experience, and I see some people online who, some of our colleagues online who worked on gender-sensitive budgeting. I wasn't a fan of the concept as such. I was a fan of the results we are looking for, but not on the concept as such. And I think this is something we can learn from the process of gender-sensitive budgeting that we've had. Somewhere it worked, and then there are some institutions where it worked better than in others. In parliaments, it sometimes worked better than it did in the governments. In the parties, it was not really present, and our women's forums very often have said, well, you know, the party budgeting is not gender sensitive, and we know that. So that is. Carolina also, and I would like to thank particularly Lina for the points that she raised, because they are sort of like a guidance on some of the issues we can look forward to, developing further. There are new issues coming up, and I think in a way Carolina put her finger on it, on on female unemployment on the increase. There will be unemployment on the increase in general, on the new forms of work that will greatly affect how women are going to fare in this new division of labor, or new patterns of labor. Let me only mention, von der Leyen had her State of the Union, and everybody's talking about the digital economy. What does that mean for women, the digital economy? And how will that play out? Carolina also mentioned the question of migrant seasonal workers. It's a huge issue in this region, and I have our colleagues from North Macedonia here, and Serbia also, Croatia, Bosnia, of course, where that seasonal migration is quite important. And last year we discussed it in our Korčula School here in Zagreb. So that's going to be one of the issues which is going to come up. Nela, you've mentioned the question of the rollout of the neoliberal model. And I think we are not the only ones in this region understanding how the neoliberal model went bust. And, maybe there's a wave we can ride on in that respect, because, we've had maybe a bit more damage because of the transition period and everything that happened. But as a rule, we are back to the discussion on what it means to have a welfare state, what it means to have social policy, what it means to have equality, what it means to have solidarity. So, in a certain sense, this is the outcome of this crisis, which may actually stimulate our thinking in that sense. And of course, we have seen in all the countries in the region that the EU acquis and criteria were a ticking box. So it doesn't matter whether you're going to be gender sensitive and the EU has a gender equality policy or strategy, the Helena Dalli one now, because it's not present in our negotiations. It's not present in our societies. Nobody talks about it. So, we've always pushed, and even pushed our S&D family, that when they from the parliament or the member states, to raise these questions in their discussions with our colleagues in the political parties. And I must say there has been a significant shift. and our colleagues from North Macedonia who are here at the last meeting of the SND, of the Progressive and Social Democratic Party leaders and others and Liberal too, in Macedonia last February, I think. That was very much present. So we've made that push towards that. So we will tomorrow we will be discussing precisely welfare and social care. The German presidency of the EU has very much highlighted that question of welfare and social policy. And there's a big project run by FEPS and FES, and we are part of the project, on social care, which is becoming extremely important in this pandemic and as a result of the pandemic. So tomorrow, with our FEPS and FES colleagues, with the participation of a very renowned group of speakers, we will be going into that in that direction. And just as a footnote, you know, we have a problem, and Anna, I'm now talking to you also, is that when policies, particularly I'm looking at international organizations, are being, policies are being made or construed and so on, there's always a sentence at the end. You know, we in designing our policies, we have to pay attention to the young, women, vulnerable groups, minorities, migrant women. Hello, we are 50% of the population. So why are we all, you know, and even young people are citizens of these countries, you know, why are we in special categories? We're not a special category. We just have to actually make ourselves a part of that process. So that much from me, and please there's a program on the web. Tune in to our discussion tomorrow on welfare and social policy. We'll have a special discussion, 2 sessions on Saturday devoted to recovery, restarting, and retooling. So what does it take to get out of this pandemic? What does it take us for the future policies, long-term, short-term, and so on? And what will it take us? What instruments do we need at our disposal? Anna, to you.
Thank you, Dasha. I think you really elaborated well all the discussions, all the topics we had so far. So I'm not going to add anything more to this. And since we are right on the time, I would like once again to thank all the participants, all the speakers, also all the team, like secretariat from all the organizers involved to organize this important panel. Also important to see their work behind this. So thank you once again, and wish you a very nice evening. Hope to see you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.